Hi everyone and welcome back to Weena Wonders. If it's your first time here, I'm Weena and this is a Booktube channel. So lately, I've been thinking a lot about the concept of identity. In literary criticism, we learned about this idea, which is there's no such thing as identity, only identification. And that's sort of the hinge of a lot of identity politics nowadays, like I identify as this, I identify as this, etc. There is no inherent being or identity. There are just a set of things that you decide to practice or decide to kind of align yourself with or identify with. And that's a concept that really intrigues me, also because I suspect that it is probably true or at least applicable in my life. I feel like in 2020 everyone is sort of on the cusp of some kind of change, and this year has really forced a lot of us to reevaluate the things we want to do with our lives, the things that we can kind of live with, the things we're willing to compromise, etc. I recently decided to leave my full-time job, which was a huge decision for me because I'm a huge ass workaholic. I'm the kind of person who landed a job even before I graduated college, so this is really the first time that I'm going to be not employed without being first employed by someone else. And the thing is that I really love my job. Loved my job. I think it's easier to leave your job if you hate it, but in my case I really loved my job, but that was also kind of the problem, where my job was sort of becoming my whole life already. And recently, since I've been sort of meditating on this concept of identity and who you are, I've also been thinking about who I want to be and who I can sort of live with becoming in the next 10 years. This year I am turning 30. In less than 3 weeks actually, and so a lot of that stuff has been on my mind, you know, like what is it that you were really building with your life. And as some of you might know, I am taking my MFA in creative writing, and that's really something that I want to focus on. At the end of the day, a girl's got a dream, and so we're gonna push for that dream. And I'm really going to be focusing more on my reading life, my writing life, and of course making videos here on YouTube. In line with that, I thought that it would be a good idea, number one, to dye my hair purple, insert clips of me dyeing my hair. After all of that chaos, I thought that I would talk about 5 books that I feel accurately depict what it means to kind of transform yourself and to explore the different facets of identity that a person can have. So the first book I want to talk about is My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. I feel like this is a very good look at the different ways in which friendship can impact who we are. In a sense, I feel like this book is really talking about how sometimes there are moments where you find out who you are by finding out who you're not, and how your friendships can really serve as like a very good mirror for those kinds of things. Sometimes if you see your friend, for example, thriving in a certain environment, you realize that that's not something for you. And then there's also that dynamic of like how the things we hate in other people are usually the things that we also hate about ourselves. And I feel like this book just accurately hits that sweet spot. It's a very long, sort of slow burn. We get to meet the 2 main characters when they're already old, and there are sort of a lot of flashbacks that kind of layer upon each other. And I think that this book is really a good study of the different ways in which you can change who you are, and how that in turn can also change who you are to other people, and how it ultimately is something in flux. Like, it's something dynamic. It's not something that is fixed, and it's something that you can sort of change. This book has a lot of really good kind of tone setting. I feel like it's a kind of book that, yeah, you kind of read for plot because it's interesting to what happens, but more than that, it's like you read it for the language and you really enjoy the atmosphere that it conjures. Up next is something that's a little bit more drastic and overt in talking about transformation. This is Tipping the Velvet by Sarah Waters. I read this a couple of years ago, and it's a book that I definitely want to reread. It follows a character named Nan, and basically it's Nan's journey from a small town where she lives a very sheltered existence to London, where she goes when she falls in love with a beautiful performer called Kitty. And this is also a queer book. It's a book about basically discovering your sexuality and discovering the different types of people that you can be, also like the different identities that a person can have both inside and outside of the bedroom. And ultimately, I feel like it's a meditation on love and the different kinds of love as well that you can kind of experience and allow yourself to have. So I find this book like one of those books where you're reading, let's say, chapter 6, and you realize that the character in chapter 6 is almost a completely different person than they were in chapter 1, but there's still like this delicious like continuity between the two characters, and it's just chef's kiss. I feel like Sarah Waters is probably my favorite historical fiction writer because she's just able to create something like so compelling about that era. This is set like in the Victorian era, by the way, if I didn't mention that, and it's such a beautiful book. If you guys are fans also of Korean movies, there's a movie called The Handmaiden, and the book that was based on, Fingersmith, is also by Sarah Waters. So yeah, she writes a lot of queer period novels, which are just beautiful. And every Sarah Waters book is a surprise, but also you can kind of count on her to deliver. Okay, up next is a book that I'm freaking crazy about. So this is the latest book that I read actually, and it's been 2 days since I read it, but I just have not been able to get over it because it's so freaking good. And this is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshbegg. This book is everything. So this book follows an unnamed narrator who decides that she's going to hibernate for a year. So basically she gets super drugged up by going to this horrible therapist and getting herself prescription drugs to basically make herself fall asleep. And again, this is also something that deals with friendship a lot, which I really like. I realize that's a trope in like stories and in fiction that I enjoy, even non-fiction actually, that I enjoy just because I feel like friendships are such an intimate thing. You know, there are certain things you would tell your friends that you would not divulge to, like, let's say your lovers, because of course it would impact them in a different way. And I just feel like friends are allowed to see you when you're absolute garbage. And this, oh god, like the friendship in this book is just, oh my god, it's so good. I don't want to spoil what this is about exactly, but the narrator has a best friend named Riva, and for a lot of the book she kind of detests Riva and sort of describes her as this really irritating person. But you just know that underneath that description also is a lot of love for her and a lot of unwillingness to be vulnerable. And god, it's just so flippin' well written. And this isn't even a long book. This is like 285 pages? Yeah, 280 pages. And it's so striking. Like I had to reread the last page like 5 times because it was so breathtaking. And it's just, it delivers on language, it delivers on plot, it delivers on character, it delivers on everything. Like, wow, fangirl woman. But yeah, this is just such a good book, and I feel like anyone would enjoy this. Like if you're into pop lit, if you're into even chick lit, because it does kind of talk about a lot of the tropes there. It is a little bit graphic, so if you're not comfortable with that, maybe this isn't for you. But also I feel like it's worth sitting through like all of the graphic stuff for just the payoff of this book. It's really good, and I think that you should read it. This is Her Fearful Symmetry by Audrey. This is Her Fearful Symmetry by Audrey Nefenegger, and Audrey Nefenegger is very famous for writing The Time Traveler's Wife, but in my opinion, this book was very underrated. It follows the twins Julia and Valentina Poole, who inherit an apartment from their British great aunt. And so they move to England, and while they're there, like lots of really creepy stuff happens, and basically this is a ghost story. There's a saying that like all love stories are ghost stories, and I think that this is like a perfect depiction of that. I don't know how to like get into this without spoiling anything, but there are ghosts, there are stolen identities, and there's possession as well. And the thing that I love about this book is that it emphasizes the things about a person that identify them or like make up their identity that are not physical. So things like the way someone carries themselves, the way you can know someone from a certain gesture, or the way that you can recognize someone from behind because of this certain unawareness that they carry with themselves when they walk. It's such a beautiful book. And I read this in this old pre-war Spanish boarding house that I used to live in college, where everything would creak and it was just super creepy. So I think that this is a great read for Christmas time. For Christmas time, because it's like colder and you know, it's creepy, but then people are in the house. So yeah, very good read. And you can find this also in a lot of like secondhand bookstores because a lot of people threw it away. Last but not the least is The Robber Bride by Margaret Atwood. So this follows three friends who have all been spited by the same woman, and that evil, despicable woman named Xenia kind of becomes what brings them all together. And this is just such a good book because the three main characters are so different, and it really dives into the different lives that they live and the different types of things that they are interested in. And I just love books like that. I love books that sort of talk about how women can be this one thing, but they can also venture out into so many other facets of industry, of history, etc. Even the villain in this, I feel like, is a very interesting person, because you are able to see her through the lenses of the three main characters, and it also shows you how identity has so much to do with perception of the self, but also with perception of the other. The only thing about this is that it does employ a lot of magical realism, so that means that they talk about magic sometimes in a way that is as though it's accepted as fact or accepted as true. And so there are some things that happen here that have no explanation really, they just are. So if you're not a fan of that, then maybe this won't be for you. But if you're okay with tropes like that, or like with a style of writing that does that, I do think that this is worth checking out because it's super well written, it's so interesting, and it's really like a good glimpse into the different ways in which our psyches kind of really play with us. So that's it for this video really. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys are having a great reading week. If you've read any of these books, please let me know. Let me know as well what you're currently reading. I would love to hear from you guys. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!